Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
Today we have 5 major stories for you. We'll start with the quiet controversy at YouTube, where the platform was caught using AI to alter creators' videos without their consent. Then we'll shift gears to a cybersecurity time bomb, looking at why Germany's national railways hiring for Windows 3.11 and countless ATMS are still running on XP. After that, a seemingly impossible collaboration has become a reality, with Meta licensing tech from AI image startup Midjourney, a huge admission of its own model's shortcomings. From there, we'll cover the FTC's Andrew Ferguson, who has put Apple, Alphabet and Meta in a bind over European data laws. And finally, we'll examine how Elon Musk's SpaceX launched an incredible 83% of all spacecraft last year, and how a risky NASA contract helped forge this new monopoly. YouTube has been secretly using artificial intelligence to edit people's videos without asking permission and without letting them know. The whole thing started when creators just noticed something was off. A YouTuber with over 5 million subscribers, Rick Beato, looked at one of his videos and thought, "My hair looks strange." It almost seemed like I was wearing makeup. Another popular creator, Rhett Shull, spotted the same strange artifacts in his own posts. His take? It looks AI generated. I think that deeply misrepresents me. Shull's video on the subject just exploded, racking up over 1.5 million views. His core concern, it could potentially erode the trust I have with my audience. And this strikes at the very heart of the creator economy. The entire system is built on an authenticity pact. Audiences follow creators for their genuine perspective. But when a platform secretly applies a filter, who is responsible? Research shows that over 1/2 of all consumers trust human-created content more than AI-generated content. If an audience thinks a creator is using a filter they didn't disclose, that trust is broken, potentially damaging their career, all for an experiment they never even agreed to. After months of rumors, YouTube finally confirmed it was running an experiment on select YouTube shorts, using machine learning to improve clarity. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer of strategy at play. It's not just about making videos look better. First, it's about competition. TikTok has a massive lead in engagement, partly because of its highly polished aesthetic. This is YouTube's way of trying to level the playing field. Second, and this is the really clever part, smarter AI enhancement can also mean better video compression. This allows YouTube to reduce its own massive bandwidth and data storage costs. So it's a win-win for the platform, but a major question mark for creators. But experts aren't buying it. One disinformation specialist from the University of Pittsburgh called it a misdirection, saying this isn't about improving quality. His words, "What we have here is a company manipulating content from leading users that is then being distributed to a public audience without the consent of the people who produce the videos." He's calling it a misdirection because YouTube is trying to draw a line between what it calls traditional machine learning and generative AI. Essentially, traditional ML is supposed to just clean up what's already there, like removing noise or sharpening an image. But generative AI creates brand new pixels that never existed. It invents data. The changes creators are seeing, the weirdly perfect hair and skin, look a lot more like generative AI. And that's a much bigger deal because it means the platform isn't just cleaning up their videos, it's fundamentally altering them. And the rabbit hole goes deeper. This isn't just about YouTube. Samsung was caught artificially enhancing photos of the moon. Google's Pixel phones have a feature that can digitally create a perfect group photo of a moment that never actually happened. The line between what's real and what's algorithmically perfected is blurring faster than ever. The real danger here is the creation of what some experts call a hyper-real standard. When every piece of content we see is silently perfected by an algorithm, our own unedited reality starts to look flawed, ugly, or unprofessional. It's a phenomenon that has led to what's called Snapchat dysmorphia, where people seek cosmetic surgery to look more like their filtered online selves. We are being trained to see an artificial, algorithm-driven standard as the new normal. It all leads to a massive question about the future of online trust. As one expert puts it, people are already distrustful of content that they encounter on social media. What happens if people know that companies are editing content from the top down without even telling the content creators themselves? From the bleeding edge of software to Well, the exact opposite. We're now looking at a cybersecurity time bomb. Now, get this. In Germany, some of the country's high-speed trains are relying on technology from 1992. The railway service Deutsche Bahn was recently hiring an IT administrator with expertise in Windows 3.11 and MS-DOS, systems that are 32 and 44 years old, respectively. This isn't just about old software. It's a human-sized problem. The situation creates what experts call a single point of failure. Think about it. The number of people who are true experts in these ancient systems is shrinking every year as they retire. This creates a huge risk for critical infrastructure. Organizations call it the bus factor, the risk that a project would be derailed if a key person was hit by a bus. When the knowledge to run a national railway exists in the minds of only a few people, that is a very fragile system. And it's not just German transit. In San Francisco, the Muni Metro light rail won't even start in the morning until someone boots up the control system with a floppy disk. This is the strange, stubborn world of obsolete Windows machines hiding in plain sight. An ATM technician confirms that many cash machines still run on Windows XP, an operating system Microsoft stopped supporting a decade ago. Why? The high costs of upgrading hardware and rewriting proprietary software. When Microsoft stopped supporting Windows XP, it meant they stopped releasing security updates. So every single security flaw discovered since 2014 is a permanent open door for hackers. This is a cybersecurity time bomb. These ATMs are vulnerable to things like the Blue Keep exploit, which allows an attacker to remotely take control of the machine. The real nightmare scenario is a cascading failure, where a single breach on one of these old systems could spread through interconnected networks, causing widespread disruption. But the real story is the human cost. For 4 years, a psychiatrist at the US Department of Veterans Affairs had to arrive at his clinic early because it could take 15 minutes just to log into his computer. The system, which dates back to the 1980s, is 100% text, all capital letters. He says something that should take a minute could end up taking half an hour because he forgot to type a single dash. The VA is now on its 4th attempt in 25 years to overhaul the system. This is a perfect example of something called technical debt. It's the implied cost of choosing an easy solution now instead of using a better approach that would take longer. For decades, it was easier to just patch the old system than to replace it. Now, that debt has come due with interest. The VA's modernisation effort, for example, faced potential cost overruns of up to $350 million. That's the staggering price of kicking the can down the road. So what's the core issue? It often comes down to specialised hardware. One fine art photographer looked into upgrading the computer for his massive high-end printer. The price tag for new software licenses alone was up to $60,000. As one woodworker put it, his workhorse machine is a tank, but the old Windows XP running it was practically a brick. This is a huge part of the right to repair debate, but for industrial scale equipment. The hardware is perfect, but the manufacturer makes it impossible to update the software, forcing you to either pay them exorbitant fees or buy a whole new machine. We've seen the Federal Trade Commission go after companies for monopolising their repair markets by restricting access to the necessary software. It traps owners with perfectly good and often very expensive hardware that is being held hostage by obsolete software. This all traces back to Microsoft's original business strategy. Unlike Apple, which tied its software to its own hardware, Microsoft let organizations use the hardware they already had. One expert calls it the ultimate infrastructure, and the reason Bill Gates is so rich. Believe it or not, this was a double-edged sword. Microsoft's commitment to backward compatibility was a brilliant strategy that secured its massive market dominance, but it also created a trap. It has saddled the entire world with this aging, insecure infrastructure. It was a strategy that prioritized widespread adoption over everything else, and we are now living with the consequences. The result is a world filled with aging but critical systems. As one software developer who specializes in updating legacy tech says, Microsoft is just something you get stuck with. Speaking of the high cost of falling behind on technology, one tech giant just made a huge move to avoid that very fate. The most unexpected news in the tech world today has to be Meta's bombshell partnership with Midjourney. Meta, the company behind Facebook and Instagram, is licensing technology from the startup famous for creating the internet's most stunning AI images. This isn't just a collaboration, it's a strategic move born from a high-stakes conflict. The context here is everything. This deal comes after Meta's own latest AI model, Llama 4, received a lukewarm reception. The company has been dealing with senior staff departures and recently had to reorganize its entire AI division under a new name, Superintelligence Labs. They are in a heated battle for dominance with competitors like OpenAI and Google, and this move reveals their new strategy. Here's where it gets interesting. This is a classic buy versus build dilemma that big companies face. Why would a company with Meta's billions and armies of engineers choose to license from a small startup? Because developing this kind of specialized tech in-house is incredibly hard and slow. This move signals a pragmatic shift. Instead of trying to build everything themselves and potentially falling further behind, they're choosing to partner up to get the best technology integrated into their products fast. It's an admission that speed is more important than ego right now. Meta's chief AI officer, Alexander Wang, put it bluntly, saying, "We are incredibly impressed by Midjourney. That's a powerful admission from a titan." Meta is specifically licensing Midjourney's aesthetic technology to differentiate its own products on visual quality. So what is this aesthetic technology they're talking about? It's all about how Midjourney's latent diffusion model works. It starts with a canvas of pure digital noise like static on an old TV, and then, guided by a text prompt, it slowly refines that noise step by step into a coherent, high-resolution image. The aesthetic part is its secret sauce. The model has been trained on vast datasets that give it an incredible sense of style, composition, and visual appeal. Meta isn't just buying a tool. It's buying an artistic sensibility that its own models couldn't replicate. The goal is to accelerate creative features for users and marketers, potentially slashing content production costs and boosting engagement across its platforms. By integrating Midjourney's image generation prowess, Meta is signaling it's ready to play hardball on visual AI. But this move isn't without its massive risks. For one, by making elite image generation so easy, is Meta accidentally devaluing the very human artists and creators it relies on for engagement? Some data already shows that A, our influencers get much lower engagement than real people, so this could backfire. And then there's the legal minefield. Midjourney is facing major lawsuits from companies like Disney and Universal, who allege it's A, I was trained on their copyrighted characters without permission. By partnering with them, Meta is walking right into that controversy, and it's unclear if they have any legal protection. This all begs one massive question. Is this a brilliant masterstroke to leapfrog the competition, or is it a calculated admission that in the race for AI supremacy, Meta was starting to fall behind? That partnership with Midjourney plunges Meta right into a legal minefield. And speaking of legal battles, the US government just drew a new line in the sand for all of big tech. The message is simple. If you weaken data privacy for Americans to comply with new laws in Europe, you could be breaking the law right here at home. This puts the biggest names in tech in an absolutely impossible position. At the centre of the storm are Europe's Digital Services Act and the UK's Online Safety Act, laws designed to crack down on online content. The core problem is that these laws try to regulate harmful content, but the definition of harmful is completely different on either side of the Atlantic. The EU and UK are focused on things like hate speech and disinformation, which they can legally restrict. But in the US, the First Amendment provides incredibly broad protections for speech. This creates a technical nightmare for the AI moderation systems these companies use. How can you train a single AI to enforce one set of rules in Paris, Texas, and a totally different set of rules in Paris, France? It's a massive challenge. But the US Federal Trade Commission is firing back, creating a high-stakes international showdown. The FTC Chairman, Andrew Ferguson, didn't mince words. He said foreign governments might be counting on American companies to take the easy way out, applying weaker, uniform security policies across the globe. The incentive to take that easy way out is huge. Research shows that just for the 5 largest US tech firms, the cost of complying with EU digital regulations is around $2.2 billion every single year. When you're spending that much on lawyers, technology updates, and constant monitoring, the temptation to just create one single, cheaper, and weaker global policy for everyone is enormous. That's the race to the bottom the FTC is afraid of. He's essentially accusing them of trying to use US tech companies to compromise American data security. This isn't just about privacy, it's also about power. Experts call this the Brussels effect, the idea that because the EU market is so large and its regulations are so strict, companies worldwide are forced to adopt European standards. This gives Europe immense global influence. The FTC's warning is a strategic move to push back, not just to protect user data, but to protect American tech dominance from foreign regulatory control. And if you think this is just a strongly worded letter, you're wrong. This warning is part of a broader Trump administration effort to push back hard on foreign regulations. Just this week, it was revealed that Britain dropped its demand for Apple to create a backdoor into encrypted data after intense US pressure. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a win. This is a critical victory for digital security. Cybersecurity experts are clear on this. There is no such thing as a secure backdoor. If you create a special key for one government to access encrypted messages, you've created a weakness that hackers, spies, and criminals can and will exploit. A backdoor for the UK would have been a vulnerability for an American user. Weakening encryption for one means weakening it for everyone, everywhere. Now, the conflict is coming to a head back in Washington. The FTC has officially summoned the giants of the industry. We're talking Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta, plus smaller players like X and Signal. They've all been called to meet with the chairman and explain how they plan to navigate this international tug of war without violating US law. So the thing is, to deal with this, tech companies are being forced to fracture their own systems. They're building what's called a balkanized internet. They use geofencing to create digital borders and build separate sovereign cloud data centers like Microsoft has done just to keep European data inside Europe. This is incredibly expensive and complex, and it signals that the dream of a single unified global internet might be dying. This all begs the question, who will these companies obey? The US government fighting to protect American data, or foreign governments demanding more control? The choice they make could redefine digital privacy for everyone. While we see these tech giants in a tug of war with governments and other players quietly created a near total monopoly in a field that's out of this world, let's start with a single statistic that might just change your entire perspective on this company. One single entity accounted for 83% of all spacecraft launched last year. 83%? That company is SpaceX, now valued at a staggering $400 billion. But it wasn't always a powerhouse. In fact, it was on the verge of total collapse. When Elon Musk founded SpaceX, he was challenging a powerful monopoly. A former NASA deputy administrator said that United Launch Alliance, a merger of Boeing and Lockheed, was charging the government hundreds of millions of dollars per launch. The government's frustration with that old monopoly is exactly what created the opportunity for this new one. The US desperately wanted to break free from ULA's high costs and slow launch pace. They needed a disruptor, and they were willing to bet big to find one. SpaceX aimed to break that hold, but the company struggled. Its first 3 launches of the Falcon 1 rocket all failed to reach orbit. With the company bleeding money, an expert from Quilty Space put it bluntly, NASA is what saved the company when it was on the brink of bankruptcy. In 2008, NASA awarded a $1.6 billion contract to the struggling startup. It was a massive gamble on a company that had just barely achieved its first successful flight. This wasn't just a bailout. It was a fundamental shift in strategy. NASA was moving from being a developer that builds its own rockets to being a customer that buys launches as a service. This is called the NASA as a customer model. The goal was to use fixed price contracts to spark private competition and drive down costs. And what we've seen is that it worked perhaps a little too well. The result of that bet today, SpaceX dominates. It conducted a record-breaking 134 orbital launches in 2024, more than double its closest competitor. So why is the gap so wide? Because while SpaceX perfected its reusable rockets, its rivals have been stuck in development. For example, ULA's new Vulcan rocket and Blue Origin's New Glenn have both faced years of technical delays and challenges with their engines and systems. This has left SpaceX with a massive head start, capturing about 70% of the entire global launch market. Its Falcon 9 rocket is now the primary way NASA sends astronauts and supplies to the International Space Station. Its Starlink satellites provide critical internet to US allies. What really brought this to a head was the next development, because when you control the internet, you control a lot more than just web access. We saw this play out in Ukraine, where Starlink became essential for military communications. But that also meant a private company could decide to limit its use for offensive operations. creating real tension between corporate policy and a nation's security needs. It raises a huge question. Who is really in charge when a private company's infrastructure becomes a tool of foreign policy? And the company is even building a network of spy satellites for the US government under a $1.8 billion contract. The dominance is so complete that even direct competitors like Amazon and OneWeb have been forced to launch their own satellites on SpaceX rockets. This all begs the question, what happens when a single private company becomes this indispensable? As one expert put it, the entire ecosystem of space has been changed, and it was changed by SpaceX. For national security and deep space exploration, relying so heavily on one company creates a single point of failure. Any technical issue, any financial trouble, any political disagreement within that one company could jeopardize the entire nation's access to space. We traded one monopoly for another, far more dominant one, and now we have to navigate the consequences.
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.